Hello and a warm welcome to this week's edition of ProperTV. So in this week's edition we're going to be looking at some of the news that's happened in the sector over the last 3 or 4 days, and also some of our predictions for what may be happening going forward. So let's get kicked off and look at what's been happening generally in the market. So one of the positive things that's come out recently is that a lot of company directors have been buying into their own companies. Now we've had this whole issue about Brexit. So clearly Brexit is still in the news, but what has that actually meant in terms of the market? Well, one thing that's come out just this week is the fact that company directors are actually buying back into their own shares. And in fact, in the week following Brexit, 40 million of shares was actually purchased by company directors, the largest of which being the chair of the Barclay Group, who's obviously in real estate, who purchased just under 1 million of his own shares back to his company, which to me indicates that the market is more confident than perhaps the media would have us believe. Now, if we look at what's happening in terms of specific companies, Taylor Wimpey just this week have released some statistics and figures in their interim reports. And what's interesting there is that at the moment they've got 2.2 billion of forward orders already in for this year. Their prices in terms of what they're charging to buyers has risen by 5.8% year to date. And also another interesting fact that's come out is that the cost of building their units has gone up. And this is a really interesting piece because this is only going to get worse. So right now they've seen an increase of just over 10k of a build, and now the average cost of a build is 129k, and that is mainly due to higher labour costs. Now clearly we don't know what's going to happen in terms of what impact Brexit will have on, say, the former Eastern Europeans either staying in the UK or moving back to their countries or elsewhere in Europe. And also we don't know what impact Brexit will have in terms of are there going to be more apprentices coming on board that can actually build the houses that we need. But that's certainly something to keep an eye on, because I predict that that will only get worse over the coming months. Now, not everybody thinks that property is a bad place to be, and in fact just over the last week 2 pension funds have actually joined forces. The London Pension Fund Authority and the Lancashire County Pension Fund have actually joined together to create a huge 1.2 billion new fund called the Local Pension Partnership. So if anyone's out there telling you property is a bad place to be, I would suggest looking at what those pension funds are doing, who clearly see that there is an opportunity to get involved in the space and to start purchasing property. Now, in terms of other news, we've seen another new licensing scheme come in this week. Now, for those of you that have been following us on our blogs for some time on yourhmoexpert.com, you'll know that we've talked about licensing a lot and what does licensing actually bring to an area. Well, very little as it happens, because most areas that are licensed still have rogue landlords running around and not adhering to the rules. So the cost now for a new licence in Peterborough is now £900. Now, licensing fees do vary massively across the country, and one of the things that we'll be investigating over the course of the next few months is those fees and how they vary and the reasons for their variance, because £900 versus some of the lower fees we're seeing of £450, £500 is a substantial difference, and for a landlord that's got multiple properties that's a huge bill to suddenly have to start forking out for. But we'll keep you appraised of any developments that happen on that front and any new licence schemes that do come through. Now we are going to talk a little bit about the new Chancellor, Phillip Hammond, at the end of today's news, but firstly I wanted to give you some more good news. Well, in fact it's not good news, it's bad news. So there was a new initiative announced last week where all landlords by 2018 have to have their rental properties receive a rating, an energy rating should I say, of E or above. Now, the government in its wisdom have decreed that every landlord that has to do this, they estimate there's 300,000 homes out there that hit this particular bracket, but as we know, government estimates are often wrong and normally ludicrously wrong as well, so we don't know how many people this is going to affect. However, what the government have said is that it'll probably cost on average about £2,000 for a landlord to do that, although they have put in place a hypothetical spending cap of £5,000. As to where they got this figure from, I don't really know. We all know that if we're going to install, say, a brand new central heating system with a boiler, which, to be frank, rental properties should have in, that's going to be at least £3,000 to maybe £4,000. Loft insulation maybe 500, cavity wall insulation maybe 500, so these costs could rapidly add up. However, again, another figure from the government has said that 60% of this stock is actually owned outright. So they're encouraging landlords to borrow more and actually do the work themselves. But just a little thing for you to be aware of, that come 2018, if you do have a property that is rated F or G, you won't be able to rent it anymore, and you will have to improve it to a level of E. And just to add salt into the wound, there will be no grants available to do this. Now let's move on quickly and look at real estate investment trusts. Now you may have remembered a few weeks back I talked about them and the fact that they are trading at a massive discount to their normal values. And some new research has come out this week to show what are some of the winners and the losers in that market. So what we're seeing right now in terms of real estate investment trusts is the winners, the people that are actually making the money and still attracting investment and still buying stock, are in areas such as shopping malls and also industrial warehouses. At the other side of the coin though is the ones that are losing out, and this is at the moment certainly London offices, other office space in high density areas, and also prime residential. And in fact we've seen a report come out this week of a huge development in Earls Court which has 7,500 homes earmarked for development. This scheme launched in 2014, and in 2014 they were selling 40 homes a week. Now in 2016 they're selling one home every 2 weeks. So obviously we've seen a huge impact in terms of that whole market, particularly prime residential in London. So another thing to be aware of in terms of when you're looking at your investment strategy and where you should be investing. Now finally, some news on the Bank of England. Now we reported a few weeks back that they had decided to maintain the current interest rate, but the rumours are flying around now in the city that actually those interest rates are going to be cut, and we could even end up with negative interest rates. Now that then begs the question, what is the difference between monetary policy and actual sound financial advice? So if we look at it on two sides, if interest rates were cut from a monetary policy point of view, how is that good? Well, firstly, by lowering the interest rates, that should stimulate the economy and it should then encourage spending. However, a financial advisor or someone just, a normal person off the street would probably not necessarily want to do that. You'd probably want to save more, and the fact that you're saving more is because you're going to take a lot longer to reach your financial savings goal because of the fact that the interest rates have gone down, as opposed to what the government would like you to do, which is to spend more. Now secondly, the other thing that potentially interest rates will do is push investors along the risk spectrum from moving from a cash basis to an equities basis. But as most financial pundits would always advise, in a fragile economy you really don't want to move into equities. You want to make sure that you have liquid cash available to invest. And in fact, when we look at what does lowering the interest rate do, every 0.25% reduction in the interest rate probably has about a 0.2 to 0.3% increase at best on GDP. And why is that? Well, it's essentially because it's not household behaviour that impacts that, it's actually lower corporate borrowings, because they will see they benefit from that. So it's interesting to know what's going on. We will keep you informed of what happens on the interest rates and how that may personally affect you as a residential property investor. So I did promise we would also mention the Chancellor in this week's edition. And the new Chancellor, Phillip Hammond, has obviously had a huge amount of lobbying from various landlord organisations and also even the media in terms of, is it right to keep these crazy taxation laws that was pushed through by George Osborne, namely the 3% stamp duty and also, and more importantly, the removal of interest rate relief for all landlords from 2017. So a question was put to him in the Commons by Craig McKinley last week, and Craig asked this question. He said, is the surcharge necessary, desirable, or indeed does it raise any additional revenue? And to that question the Chancellor answered with this very telling response. He said, tax is there for a simple purpose, to raise revenue. I expect the tax we put in place to achieve that. So the Chancellor is very much keeping everything close to his chest in terms of what he is or isn't going to do. We're not forecasting a budget until October at the moment. He could do an emergency budget. There is obviously always that chance, but so far we've not seen any signs or hints he's going to do that. But it is interesting that Phillip Hammond himself is a landlord, and he's taken this stance that actually we're going to keep the tax in because it raises revenue. So finally, I just wanted to finish off with some good news, because there's always good news in property. And good news is that this week we've been asked to send our book, Cracking the Property Code, to the British Library, which is very exciting for us all here, which means that we have a copy in the British Library, and it also means that we've only got about 9 or 10 books left. So if you want a copy of Cracking the Property Code, it is £20. You can get it through our website, and you can also get it through Amazon, and we'll be happy to send one of the remaining copies through to you. And anyone that does purchase one of the copies that we have left, you'll get a new abridged edition when it comes out later on this year. So thanks for listening to Property TV, and again, any news articles, questions or comments you'd like us to cover in future editions, please do send us an email in to the team, and we'll be happy to look at it for you. Thanks a lot, and bye bye.